well, you know what that's like. You know where you're going to end up, right? Because this is sliding and sliding and sliding. That's where the enemy wants you. He wants you to slide. He wants you to not be firm. Paul says, stand firm. That's why he put on the armor.
Amen.
So sometimes the enemy comes at us like this gale force wind with his accusations. You're not good enough. You just won't make it. You're too bad. God can't use you. I know about the gale force wind. Do you? Sometimes that gale force is so strong, even when you know the truth, you can't stand on it. It's like you're tottering. You feel like you're falling off. And then you have questions, right? Then you have questions. My goal this morning is to encourage you. Encourage you to stand firm. But mostly I'm speaking to myself today, because I need to hear this word. So 10 years ago, we were in a ministry and it was time to end. And so we said, let's take a 3-month sabbatical, just kind of step aside, and we got some counseling from some people, and just it was good to step aside. We anticipated that in 3 months we would be in the next ministry. Knowing that we were going to be in a sabbatical, we started talking with the leadership of the denomination I'm a part of. And so they said, hey, there's this church in Hoboken. There's a need. And so we were thinking about that, and we're convinced that in 3 months we would be on to the next thing. It didn't work out that way. Have you ever prayed, taken steps of faith based on what you believe God's asked of you, and it doesn't work out? Can we talk today a little bit about, is God trustworthy? Or maybe, how trustworthy is God? What can I trust him with? So we're nearing the end of our 3 months anticipated sabbatical. And we can see, I can see, this collision coming, a collision with debt. You know, where our resources were such as they were, we could handle 3 months. But going much more beyond that, not looking too good. We were committed to following every lead that God gave to us for other work. But I felt like God said to me, listening to his voice, trying to understand his voice, I felt like he said to me, Bill, I don't want you to put out any resumes. I don't want you to pursue work that you look for. I want you to trust me. And as a matter of fact, in due time, at the right time, I, God, will thrust you into ministry. It's not good wisdom. It's not the prevailing wisdom to even leave your job without having another one lined up, right? We left our job not knowing anything, and now God's saying, don't even, at least that's what I thought. Do you wonder whether you hear God's voice? I wondered this through this whole time. God, is this really you? And so we were committed to following every lead that came to us without pursuing. So we had this Hoboken thing going on, and so we drove out to Hoboken. Ever been to Hoboken? Yeah, it's not worth going. That was 10 years ago. It's probably better now. You know, it's built up, I'm sure. It wasn't much then. And it was very uninspiring. We were just going to check it out. You know, you come from Brooklyn, you see, it was old. hardly any kind of city center. But we were following the lead, so we called them up and said, hey, you know, we would be interested in considering, you know, serving with you. And they were very warm, and so quickly we're on this phone interview with them, and they were very genuine people. They seemed to be willing to be led, and just great people. So we said, well, we'll pray about it, and then we'll get back to you. Would you recall with me for a minute the story of Moses? Remember Moses? You know, he grows up in Pharaoh's house as an adopted son into the Pharaoh's house, the chieftain of the land. He's there for 40 years. He's doing well. He's doing good. But he has the sense, he's a Hebrew, and the Hebrews are all enslaved. And he has the sense that you know, God's called him to deliver the Hebrews in some way, you know, and he's got this position. He's got all the kind of authority he needs. And so one day he sees a couple of the Hebrews being mistreated by some Egyptians, and so he kills the Egyptian. I'm delivering. I'm doing the work. So the next day he sees a couple of Hebrews arguing with each other, and he says, hey, what are you guys doing? And they say, what are you going to do, kill us too? And he realizes, oh, people know. And it's going to get back to Pharaoh, and then it's the end of me, and this whole deliverance thing, it's not working out for me. And so he hightails out of town, and he goes way, 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 way far away into the desert. And now he's been there 40 years. Trying to forget whatever happened. He's married, has 2 children, steady job. Yeah, what's to look back on that? I mean, this is a good setting. He's stable. It's a good place. Now he sees God in the burning bush. God messes up our lives, doesn't he? You know, Moses, you need to go back and face your fears. You need to go back and finish the job. I got work for you to do. Oh, wait a minute, God. No, I tried it. It didn't work out. And I'm not the guy for the job. And so Moses resists, but God insists. God wins. And God says, okay, you know, I'm going to give you some help here. Here, 2 miracles you can have in your pocket. Throw that rod down, it becomes a snake. Pick it up again, it'll be a rod. Get some water, pour it out, it's going to be blood. You know, I'm going to give you some credibility, some things you can show that you're from me. This is going to work out for you. And besides, I'm God. I'm going to do the delivering. It's not even your work. So go and do the work. Come on, get on. So he finds himself in front of Pharaoh. And, you know, Pharaoh, he's not too impressed. You can do miracles. I can do miracles. You know, I got guys that can do all sorts of stuff too. And by the way, who's this God? Like, I'm God. Let's read it. Do we have it? Okay, let's read it. So it goes like this. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go so that we may hold a festival to me in the wilderness. Pharaoh said, who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. Then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword. But the king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to your work. Then Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working. And that same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people. You are no longer to supply the people with straw and make bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw. But require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That's why they're crying out, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies. Make them dependent on the government. Make them dependent on the government. Make them work so hard that they have no time to think about rebellion, all they can think about is what? Survival, right? Survival. That's all. He's no dummy. He doesn't want to lose his workforce. And so, this is not working out quite the way Moses thought. Let's carry on. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them. And they said, this is the Hebrews, "May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Now, before we go there, let's just make sure we know what's going on here. So Moses steps out and he does what God says. He obeys. He's saying, okay, God, I didn't want to do this, but now I'm doing it. You promised you're going to be with me. It's going to work out. I'm stepping out. I'm doing it. And it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. I don't know about you, but sometimes that creates a question for me, as it did for Moses. Let's read. Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Why, Lord? Why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? I mean, I stepped out, I did what you said you were going to deliver, and now it's gotten worse for them, and now they're trying to get me. It's really a bad deal. And ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all." You take that step, you do what God wants you to do, and it gets worse rather than better. It's rather disorienting for Moses. It's dashed expectations. It's doubts. Will God really come through? Will God do what he said? Matter of fact, did God really tell me not to send out a resume? Did God really tell me to do whatever it is that you have in your mind that you believe God wants you to do? Is this really of God? Come on, look, it's getting worse rather than better. And the doubts come, and the enemy comes. Oh, yeah. Where is God anyway? Look, you didn't hear God. It was just your own stupid idea. Who are you to think you could do that, take that step? Or how could you ever trust God for something like that? God's not interested in those things of your life. He's got all sorts of tags for you and me. So Hoboken was a great experience for us. We went there. It was a candidating experience, so I get to preach. And I felt the liberty to preach. And they were receptive and kind of soaking up things that I was saying. And it just seemed like a good situation. And we felt like we had something that they needed. Leadership, and some teaching, and some help and support. They had something we needed. We needed a job, place to serve. And guess what? They had a parsonage. Because we had talked to our landlord saying, we're moving on. We're thinking we didn't have a timeline, but he immediately started to find people to fill the place. Now we're only weeks away from needing to move out of our place with no place to go, no income, nothing. And, here's a parsonage right here in Hoboken. It seems like a good fit. It seems like, hey, God's working things out, kind of fitting it together. The timing is right. The ministry is right. It's all good. So he said, hey, this looks good. If you like this, we like this. We'll take a few minutes, we'll pray together, and we'll give you a call. So we went home, prayed about it, called him up and said, yeah, we'll go forward. But we had to leave a message because nobody picked up the phone. So we waited a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, no message, no return. What's happening? So we said, well, we should call again. So called again, same number, same situation. Nobody was there, left another message. Hey, just wondering where you're at. We're still interested. And then we waited another week, 2 weeks. I don't know how long we waited the second time. But that didn't seem right. So we said, let's call one more time. But before we do, let's take a moment to pray together. Now, we had been praying, but before we make a specific call right now, let's pray. So that evening we got together and prayed. We were discussing it and praying together. And as we were praying and discussing, we just felt like the Lord was saying, you know, I gave you a vision. God had given both of us a vision independently that was similar, a vision of working with young people, being alongside young people, in proximity with them where they are. Young people being like you. Not Viviana, but like the rest of you. 20-somethings, 30-somethings, and just could be a part of them, be a part of their lives. And it seemed like this was a sideways move. It wasn't the move that would go forward towards that vision. And we talked about, we realized God was saying, this is not the place. This is not the way. This is not where I'm calling you to. So, as we're talking about it, the phone rings. And it's people from Hoboken. And so we had just decided this, and so we had, we can't receive this. We just feel like God is saying this is not the time, and they were gracious and received that. Apparently they had lots of illness, and so nobody was getting back, and whatever was their issue. But God was working, right? But that was somewhat disorienting for us, because now we're only a couple of weeks away. Where are we going to live? How can we be faithful to our responsibilities, our landlord? What are we going to do? Very disorienting in that moment. So Moses feels, where are you, God? This is a big deal. I'm now Pharaoh, this God guy in Egypt. He's angry at me. All my people that I'm trying to deliver, they're all angry at me. You're not doing what you promised and said. What's the deal? I should go back to the desert. And this is what God says to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand, he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of his country. Listen, Moses, I am doing something bigger than what you can see or even think about at this moment. I'm doing something so big that in 2024, people are going to look back at what I did at that moment and say, God does amazing things. He delivers with a mighty hand. But I'm doing something bigger, so you've got to hang with me. Stay with me. It's got to get worse before it can get better, and my hand is seen. You can't see it right now. But I am doing something bigger and better than what you know at this moment. So the pressure was increasing for us to get out of our place. I felt a little bit like, no, wrong. I felt a lot like I was the Israelites who God led out of Egypt and around to the Red Sea, right? We can't get, the Red Sea's there. They're not going to swim across there. And now Pharaoh, wait a minute, I lost my workforce. He's got his army and he's coming around. He's coming behind them, ready to get his workforce back. And so they're caught in the middle. Talk about a rock and a hard place. Where you go? What do you do? I felt that way. No place to go. And so we decided, well, we'll go to a real estate agent and look for a place. And so they took us around. Some places cost too much. Other places were too small. Of course, they're always looking for what? Proof of income. Well, I had none. And so it was, we went around, saw a lot of places. One place was kind of nice, except that the bedroom had only enough space, actual floor space, for our bed. Couldn't have walked around anywhere. And we were looking for a specific neighborhood, kind of a neighborhood that was beginning to gentrify but wasn't there yet. And so we could be on sort of the ground floor of what God was doing in a neighborhood. That's kind of what we wanted. We're looking for that. So one Sunday, there was an open house. And we went to this open house and looked at the place. The complex was nice. It was the right neighborhood. It was beginning to gentrify, but wasn't quite there yet. The price was right for the apartment. This layout of the apartment was fit with what we wanted to do with the apartment. And the price was right. And so we went to the office and said, we'd be interested. Of course, they wanted at least 6 months, evidence of 6 months worth of rent, which we had about that much. But they said, well, we can only apply this to the second 6 months of the year. What about the first 6 months? I still don't understand it, but it wasn't working for us. We didn't have the money for what they needed. Obviously, that wasn't going to work. We said, wow. So we went home. That Tuesday, we went to our church, and it was a prayer meeting, and so we had one of the deacons pray with us for our housing situation. On Thursday, we got an email from a friend a few blocks away from us saying, oh, there's somebody across the street that I know that she's got an apartment that's free right now. You might want to look at it. On Friday, we went to go look at it. On Saturday, we said, yes, we'll take it. Listen to this. This gal, first of all, this place was only a few blocks from where we were living at the time. And so that was helpful to us because, our 3 children just had left. So, we were a little bit disoriented from that. We just left the ministry, so we were a little disoriented from that. And so it was helpful to be able to stay in the same neighborhood, same barber, same shopping, same, pathways, so that at least something is the same in this moment of disequilibrium. And she didn't need a deposit. She didn't need any security. She didn't ask for any references. The price was exactly what we had been paying. She just said, come on in and come on live with me here. And get this. They had a washer and a dryer in the apartment. Brooklyn knows what that means, right? Yeah. So, God was doing something bigger. The story doesn't end there, but this part of the story is God was doing something bigger than what we realized. We spent 5 years there, had a great relationship with the landlord. We became friends. It was it's still one of the prettiest streets in Brooklyn, 72nd Street. If you go there in the spring, it's lined with these cherry blossom trees. It's beautiful. I'm here just simply to remind you today, whatever your circumstance is, God is doing something bigger. When it seems like the situation is bigger than what you can handle, it's bigger. God is bigger than that. He's doing something bigger. And if you have taken a step of faith and somehow it's just not working out and it seems like it's falling apart, listen, God is still working. And He's doing something bigger than what you can see at this moment. He doesn't work in your way, but He's working on your behalf. He died for you and brought you into His kingdom because He loves you, and He's working with His power and His strength and His wisdom to accomplish a greater thing than what you can even ask or imagine. Isn't that what Paul says? He can do exceedingly, abundantly, above all that we ask or imagine. But I want to encourage you with these 2 verses. Let's start in Revelation chapter 1. It says this. This is John. He's on the island of Patmos. He's there. It's a prison island under the Romans. He's being persecuted. He's been arrested because he's a preacher of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He's been consumed by the goodness of God. He's seen Jesus in the flesh. He's seen Him in the resurrection. He knows what he knows, and he's convinced, and he's following that. So he's as a prisoner. And Jesus comes to him on this island to give him this vision that we know as the book of the Revelation. And so he's explaining, this vision is from this Jesus, and he's describing Jesus. In the middle of it, he says, and he has made us to be a kingdom. This is not the right verse. No. I'll read it. I don't know. I probably gave you the wrong verse. But I'll get it. Where's Revelation? Thank you. Okay, this just was good for me. Oh yeah, I gave you the wrong verse. And Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and just kind of just throwaway line almost. The faithful, lost it again. Faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of the kings of the earth. That's verse 5. Ruler of the kings of the earth. It just almost doesn't apply here in this moment, but I want to just say this. Listen, if you're a political pundit, if you're a political person, and that's a big part of your world, or if you're a follower of all that stuff that's going on, listen to me. Jesus is the ruler of all kings. Whether it's Putin or Zelensky or Biden or Trump, whoever, listen, he's the ruler over all. We have nothing to fear. Now listen to what Jesus shows himself to John in this grandiose way, in it's splendid way. It's just it's so over the top that John falls down on his feet, and this is what happens. Oh, you got the verse 5. Let's the next one. Next. No, sorry. The other one I gave you, I think it's whatever it was. You're so good, you get this without me even talking. Okay. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, do not be afraid. You afraid today? You afraid today? Things are falling apart. It's not working the way you thought it should. Do not be afraid, he says. You see, I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. And I hold the keys of death and Hades. Listen, this is Jesus who loves you, who died for you. He says, do not be afraid. He does not want you and I to be afraid. When the gale force of the enemy comes at you and it feels like all hell is breaking loose, that you're the worst person in the world and nothing can help, that you have insignificance. Listen, do not be afraid. Jesus says, I'm the one that tells you what's true and what isn't. I'm the one that loves you. I'm the one that gives you significance. I'm the one that is going to work things out in your life. I'm the one that's doing something bigger than what you can see right now. This is him. This is Jesus. He says that to you. And because it's him, and because of what he says, you can stand firm. That's what it means to put on the armor. To stand firm in the truth of what God declares about you and about me. May we just speak some vulnerable truth for a moment. This morning, when I felt the gale wind, I could hardly stand. I could hardly stand. I knew this truth, but I could still hardly stand. Why? Because the emotions can so overwhelm us, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? Amen. And we can feel so unfirm. And it seems like what the enemy is saying and accusing of us of is just true. And I feel like giving up. Oh, I felt like getting up this morning. But no matter how you feel, this is still true. And I'm here to say to you, remind you it's still true. One of the things I did, this story that I'm telling you about my life, it lasted 1.5 years, okay? This was just the first 3 months. And it went deeper and further. But when God said, don't put out a resume, I'm going to thrust you in, that's exactly what he did at the other end. That what I heard from God really was from him. The enemy wants you to doubt what he's putting in your heart. He wants you to, no, it can't be. Where in the Bible does it ever say don't put out a resume? Where in the Bible does it ever say put out a resume? We can so easily doubt what we sense God saying to us. I want to encourage you. One of the things that's been most helpful to me is remembering that story. Remembering what God has done in the past in my life. And I share that for you so that you can know God works. He works. He's worked in my life. He's worked in many people's lives. He's worked in your life. Remember that. Let it stir your faith so that when you feel like giving up, when the emotions just so overwhelm you, you can say, yeah, I may feel this way, but God is still alive. And he says, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Stand firm. We need to help each other stand firm. It was most helpful for me this morning to be able to share with my wife, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. I know it's not true, but I need to say it. And then need to hear, yeah, you're right, it's not true. This is the answer. Do not be afraid. He has your best interest at heart. Father, thank you. Thank you for your